Welcome back to Prime Your Day, Prime Your Midlife. And today I've got Dave Radley here. And I'm going to ask you, how much time have you got in your life? Well, I've got Dave here today because he's got 4 kids and he runs his own business with 19 members of his team. And he also fits in marathon running. But more about that later. Dave, hey, how are you today?
I'm all right, Chris. Thank you. Good. Just been a bit of a gloomy day, but yeah, all good.
All right. Well, we're going to trade stories today about bringing the best version of ourselves to life. But before we get to some of the achievements that you've done, I just want to roll back the clock a little bit and maybe just tell us about you as a professional sports player. What did you manage to do and where did you manage to do that?
Yeah, I had a spell from kind of playing as a youth player, from being 10 years old up into 16 years old. I had, from being 15, I was involved with a couple of professional clubs, just training and being involved. I was at St Helens for about 12 months, just training after school, straight away from school. You know, my dad used to pick me up to go training. I decided not to stay there. Fast forward to being 17 years old, I made the move to Halifax, which was Halifax Blue Sox at the time. I signed a contract when I was 17, and I spent 2 years there. And then I moved to Rochdale, did 12 months there, and then had a little bit of time back in the amateur game. Went back out to Charlie Lynx, as there was known at the time. I did a few games there, to be honest, 6 months or so, and then kind of drifted back into the amateur game, and then played out the rest of my time doing that, probably for another 10 years or so after that. So yeah, it was quite a long career, 22, 23 years in total.
Okay, so while you were doing that, would you say that you were pretty much fit and on top of your game, and you could look in the mirror and think, do you know what, I look all right?
To a point, yeah. I'd 2-3 years ago, I'd probably just said it flat out, yeah. But as I'm sure we'll get onto in a bit, I'm probably in better shape now than I was back then. If only I'd known what I know now. But yeah, I was fitting up. I was doing okay, and yeah, I'd say I was looking after myself enough to keep involved anyway.
Okay, but you broke a few things along the way. I just want to reel off some of your. I think you're like Eddie Knievel in terms of things that you've broken. Just want to list a few things that you've managed to break, patch up, and tear along the way.
Yeah, God, I'm trying to think of the order. I think from being about 13, I broke my hand first, and then I had a knee operation when I was 17, knee operation when I was 18. I think I had 3 more after that when I was in my 20s. I popped my collarbone when I was about 20. Did both AC joints when I was about 22. Then as for full-on fractures, I broke within a 4 or 5 year period. To be honest, I did my arm. The season after I went back, I broke my arm. The season after I broke the thumb. The season after then I broke my leg. Then the shoulder, the AC joints came. I popped those, and then the season after I broke my foot. And then I think I had a couple of years where I didn't have too much, apart from I had some torn hamstrings and torn calves and stuff like that, which weren't too bad. And then I went back. I was coaching probably last time I was involved about 9 years ago. And I decided to pull shirts on again just to help the team out. And surprise, popped my little finger out with a bone, came straight out, and had to have operation on it and all that kind of stuff, which I think my wife kind of told me that was enough at that point. So yeah, quite a checkered history with regards to injuries.
So I'm curious. I know we've both listened to the High Performance podcast, and there's one on there with Johnny Wilkinson. He talks about this repetitive pattern of keep on breaking things and pushing yourself too hard. Was there anybody looking at you, or you're looking at yourself, to say, Dave, there seems to be a recurring theme here about breaking things and pulling things. Do you not think this is a time to maybe call it a day?
Yeah, I probably did each time, to be honest, especially when I was getting injuries when I was back in the amateur game. because at that point, you know, I wasn't getting paid for playing. I had a job, I had a manual job that I couldn't do, obviously, when I was stuck in plaster for like 8 weeks. I used to think it every time, and I think, you know, the frustration builds because, as with every injury, you kind of, you know, probably lose a yard of pace because you can't train as much. I mean, as I said, it was happening every year. I was losing, you know, massive amounts of ground in training patterns and pre-seasons and stuff like that. So you kind of feel yourself, your ability, not ability, your performance is going down a little bit more each time, I think. So yeah, I did consider it. But then just, I don't know, the circle of friends that I have and the environment. I live in a rugby league town in Leigh, and it's all rugby league. You know, if you go out for a drink at the weekend, it's all rugby, and you soon get talked back into it. And that camaraderie, really, I think it was after work and away from, you know, the stresses of work and the rest of it, it was a release, I think. So as much as I was kind of contemplating going back, it didn't take long for someone to persuade me to put the boots back on again, and off I went, really.
Okay, and so when you were going through all that aspect of rehabilitation and training, I guess you said going out with the lads, probably consumption of, you know, beer and that, was that part of that life? And then when you stopped training, did that sort of camaraderie and going out with the lads continue?
Yeah, no, and yeah, in answer to your question, beer was absolutely involved. And you know, I've forged a lot of good friendships. As I finished playing, I mean, I did go back coaching, so I was still in and around that environment. Coaching is far more stressful than playing, might I add. But yeah, it did carry on. And then I suppose what comes with that is you're not kind of training as much. You're still going out drinking as much and eating as much or whatever, and you're not really doing the things that kind of combat that and keep weight off and the rest of it. But yeah, it very much carried on, yeah, for a long period.
Okay, so we're kind of moving to what I would maybe consider to be our sort of first lesson here, which is you carried on doing the same thing, but you weren't burning the engine as much. So tell us about what consequence that faced up to you with in terms of your weight gain. Where did that get you to?
I think you don't kind of realise. I think when you're in an environment where, let's say, you've been going to the rugby club for a long period of time, and you're playing and you're keeping weight off and such, you get a lot of people there who no longer play and have put weight on it and stuff, and it's almost, I was going to say accepted, but when accepted, you get your older boys there that have just kind of naturally gone into that phase of, you know, putting a bit of weight on and kind of not taking as much care of the body. And I think it's just accepted, and I'm not knocking that. I mean, I was one of those. It was a case of you could still go to the rugby club and get as much kind of attention. I'm going to call it attention because talking about old times and how well you played a few years ago, and I think you get into that kind of false sense of security that it's okay to go and pile 3-4 stone on because everyone else is doing it, and I've done my bit type of thing, because in those circles you're still respected for what you've done over time, and especially if you're coaching, you're still giving a bit back. It's just accepted, and I think only when you really start to think a bit deeper and think, you know what, you know, if that might be the case, and you feel kind of accepted and comfortable, you get too comfortable because I don't think your body's really appreciating you putting it through that, and it separates itself from the mind, I think, and within no time you put 3, 4, 5 stone on, and you're thinking, wow, I've got to do something about this, and where did this come from? I was an athlete. I still consider myself some form of athlete, and I think you look in the mirror and still think you are, even though you've gone bigger. I know I did. And then, I mean, I look now where I'm in a different phase, which I know we're going to talk about, and you think, wow, it's almost like, how did I get to thinking that, and think I could sustain this for a long, you know, period of time without something happening, something serious happening, I think. So yeah, you've got to get a grip.
I mean, you talk about a couple, the words that struck me was that it's a natural thing. People naturally expect you to put your weight on, and it's also accepted. But the implication for you, Dave, was that you got to, what kind of weight were you when you were at your heaviest in terms of that gradual progression of weight going on, exercise not happening, and also as you get into your late 30s and 40s, the ability to burn calories also changes, but it's really slow over time. But where did you find yourself in terms of your heaviest point?
Yeah, I was just touching 18 stone at the heaviest. I mean, when I was playing rugby at a decent level, I was probably averaging at about 15 stone. And I can honestly say, you know, I think there was a probably 2-year period creeping up to 18 stone where I didn't get on the scales or anything. I was still training.
Just in terms of, I mean, I know you said you went to a Bupa assessment, but in terms of the stark facts, that actually would be to be clinically obese in terms of your size. 18 stone is considered to be not just overweight, but actually affecting your medical longevity for you to be able to be longer life. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. And I think yeah, I went to Bupa. I kind of got to a point. It was around about, I think I want to say about June time, 2020. So I'd seen the kind of the COVID situation unfold, and I was kind of looking at the telly, and people who was getting caught with COVID at the time was kind of people with underlying conditions who might have, and obesity was obviously one of those situations. And I thought, God, I'm creeping up here, and I could potentially be in a bit of danger. I knew a couple of people who'd kind of, you know, had heart attacks, had heart problems, who was through stress at work, pressure at work, and obviously I had my own business. So I kind of looked at myself and thought, well, you're 18 stone, you've got quite a stressful lifestyle, stressful job, and you need to do something. So I just took the plunge and went to Bupa and said, can I have an health assessment? So I had, and I was kind of, I had it in my head that, you know, blood pressure was going to be up, and I was high risk and stuff like that, which it wasn't, to be fair. It was probably at a point where they were saying, you know, if you keep creeping up, it's going to be, but you really need to look at losing a few kilograms. I think, you know, they do the charts and percentage risk of getting diabetes within a period of time, or heart disease or whatever. The statistics were creeping up, the percentages were creeping up, and it's not something, it was a bit of a shock. And I thought, you know what, it's time to do something. So,
well,
yeah.
let's talk about what you decided to do. But I'm just curious. I mean, I went through my own kind of weight metamorphosis. I think I wasn't as bad as 18, but I was still knocking on 15, 16. And I look back at some of the pictures now, and I'm properly beef, and I can't quite believe what that was. What was the point, or who, or was it environment, friends, kids? How did you suddenly think, I can't do this anymore, I need to fix this?
I think one of the main catalysts is my children. I mean, when you've got 4 young children, my aim is to be there for them for as long as I possibly can, and in the best shape I possibly can. And my wife, you know, I've got responsibilities, and you know, that's not just to myself, that's all the family. So,
and did they say anything to you? Did you see a picture, or is it just a self-realization that this has to stop?
Yeah, I didn't see a picture. However, you know, since I've lost weight and I am where I am now, I look back at pictures and think, wow, I kind of don't recognise myself, and I didn't see it at the time. You know, I used to look and think, no, you look all right. And that's the scariest thing, because I actually got to a point where I think, I didn't even think anything of it. When I look back now, you know, the before and after pictures, it's really alarming. And I look massive, and I didn't even see it at the time. So I think I think the moral of that is it's so easy to get into and not recognise.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the point. I sometimes call about this as the first mountain and the second mountain. You wanting to be there for your kids in the future. Bupa giving you a chart that looks as if you're a little bit off the wrong end of the scale. What did you decide to do, Dave?
Decided to have a look at, you know, what I was eating, what I was putting inside my body, and you know, I started counting calories. And I think what I found quite early is what I was eating wasn't rubbish. It was quite sensible, what you would consider sensible food, but I was eating far too much of it and didn't really realise. So I started, I got myself MyFitnessPal app on the phone, and I was monitoring all the calories, and I thought, what, I'm going to do it all the time. I've done all the fad diet stuff in the past and put weight back on and such. So I set it over a period of time to lose, like half a pound a week, something like that, if I remember rightly. And then just went on that journey. And I got to quite enjoy it. And as time went on, you're losing a bit, you're feeling a bit better. And then as time goes on, a bit more, a little bit better. And then I started realising I could do more with the training, and then obviously the events and the running and everything come after.
And how did you remain disciplined to that? Because I know I've got a couple of vices, crisps, chocolate chip cookies, and they kind of talk to me at the petrol station when I'm trying to check out, and I'm sure everybody else has got the same little things. How did you remain resolute to your discipline to say no? Was this something of your sports background where you knew you had to do this to be the best version of a rugby player, and now you've been the best version of dad? How did you discipline yourself?
Yeah, I think that not really looks at it like that. I think that pretty much sums it up. If I get something in my head, quite an addictive personality, where if I'm doing something, I want to do it right. So I'd set my mind to something, and I think I've done stuff like that in the past, but not to that extent. I think when you start seeing results, you dig in even deeper, and you think, wow, this is actually working.
Did you share your vision with anybody in terms of your mates or your wife or people to hold you to account, or was it really a personal mission that you were on this changing curve?
I'd say personal mission, really. It was just something I wanted to do myself. My wife was aware of it. Obviously, we live together and eat and drink together and such. But yeah, more of a personal journey, really, that I'm still enjoying now.
Okay. And I think you've managed to go quite a long way in terms of running. When did that start? And tell us about some of the results you've got on that point, Dave.
Yeah, I've always done a bit of running as in my training, but I think I went through a period of, because after the knee operations and my knee used to really swell, and I used to get a lot of pain when I was running. And I've had lots of conversations. My brother-in-law started doing a bit of running about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and I wanted to go with him. And I used to say, I remember sitting on Christmas Day saying, I'd love to come running with you, but my knees are knackered and I just can't run anymore. And that was ingrained in my head that the running days were over.
That sentence is just such a stark thing, isn't it? I'd love to go running, but my knees are knackered and I can't run. My knees are knackered and I can't run.
Yeah.
Let's just remember that sentence that you had there on that Christmas Day, and then tell us about how that became suppressed and how you then moved in to become a runner.
Yeah, I do often go back to that sentence and reflect on that, because when the gyms closed in the first lockdown, I thought, well, I'm going to have to do something. So I started doing little bits of running, a couple of miles, something like that. And I think I lost about maybe half a stone, I want to say, at that time. So I thought, what, I didn't get much pain from the knees, but the further I started going running, coincided with more weight loss. And it was as simple as, what, I've done 3 marathons since, and seen half marathons and such, and not had any knee trouble. And I think it was as simple as I was carrying too much weight. And, you kick yourself now and think, I've sat there all that time and missed out on stuff because I was just ignorant to the fact that I was just carrying too much weight.
Okay. So you're now a marathon runner, and I take my hat off to you. Your times are definitely better than mine. But the people that might be just, oh, come on, I can't run, and who does he think he is? Well, he's been a professional rugby player. It's easy for him. What's your kind of challenge message back to people that are sitting there with their arms crossed, having another pack of Doritos, watching something on telly?
Yeah, the message is, anybody can do it. I mean, especially something like running. Obviously, within reason, if you've got an injury that stops you doing that, fair enough. But for all the reasons I've said about, weight gain and stuff like that, I'd say get out there. I mean, it's helped with me with, looking at calories and stuff, because, I can go out on a Sunday and run for 3 hours maybe, and the calories that burns is phenomenal. So you can eat more and stuff. So I think if you make it a part of your life, I don't really see it as restricting myself anymore. And I used to laugh at when people used to say that they had different relationships with food. It was a real thing I used to laugh at. But then I can openly say now, yeah, I have a real different relationship with food, and I do. I mean, that's probably a separate conversation for another day, but the calories and the run, it kind of outweighed itself and stuff. But yeah, get out and do it. I mean, I've made a lot more friends when I've been going running, doing 10Ks, half marathons, the people you meet who are also like-minded. I mean, you think my story's interesting. I mean, you do it yourself, Chris. I know you come across people who are 70, 80, 90 years old and they're still doing it, and they're there running alongside you in marathons. It's such a good environment to be in, and I just can't get enough of it.
Okay, and has it given you any other breakthroughs of your own mental strength, or what has this journey provided for you in terms of benefits? Not just the weight loss, but also other things that you think, hang on a minute, I can see the other connected links here.
Yeah, I think with marathon running, I think I've spoken to a lot of people over the last couple of years and said, you know what, do it, because you can relate it to every facet of your life. It's almost like, them little building blocks when you're preparing for a marathon. You're starting with the low miles and creeping up to the, when you stood on the line on marathon day, you've done all the hard work, and it's just them building blocks. And I think you can apply that to everything in your life, just getting them basics right every day, just the little fundamentals every single day, and the building blocks to the bigger things. It doesn't just come overnight. I have related it to everything, and there's that little saying of like, do hard things. I think it's kind of challenging yourself, and I've challenged myself to more and more in the kind of, some people think I'm mad. I've done just back-to-back marathons and just really gone for it. I'd like to think when I face different face adversity with other parts of my life, I think it's developed that resilience, from the cold nights where I don't want to do my intervals on Tuesday night or a threshold run on a Thursday, and I've got to get my ass out there to do it. You come back and think, you know what, I'm proud of myself because I went out there and did it, and it's improved my resilience with my work and my family, and people around you take note from it. My kids, they want to train, they want to do stuff, they want to achieve. It impacts everything. Yeah.
You had a moment where somebody said something to you about how you look or how you've inspired somebody else that's just made you feel within yourself proud?
Yeah, I think when I started losing weight, it coincided with COVID, and no one was going out, so I kind of hadn't seen anyone for like 12 months, maybe in some cases. So I'd seen 18 stone Dave, and then all of a sudden it was 14 stone Dave, and some people I'd literally walked past, and they just didn't recognise me. It was a bit of a shift. But yeah, a lot of people have said, "Oh, what's the secret?" and stuff like that. And it's really nice. Obviously, I mean, you don't do it for that, but then it's nice to give it back and say, you know what, just look at calories, just move your body. It don't have to be running by any stretch. I just happen to enjoy doing that. It's just move your body, walk to work, take the stairs, whatever. All those little things. I probably do get a bit frustrated when people are like, no, it's not that, you must have done something. And it's like, no, really don't. I'd like more people to take heed from it, really.
Okay, well, part of what we talk about on this podcast is midlife and how we go through things. And it's interesting that, knowing your age, you've moved into this stage as perhaps you could also be considered to be going into midlife. Do you think there's any connection there between a change in Dave and a change of how you confront your future?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of people get to this point in their life where they start evaluating things. It probably has coincided. I mean, I don't think anyone could have predicted what's happened over the last, 2-3 years. And probably what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years actually either. But yeah, I think would it have come anywhere? I'm not too sure. I tend to relate it to COVID a lot, and think, you know what, if that hadn't have happened, would I have reflected as much? I'm not too sure really.
Yeah, sometimes people need that secondary or a jolt for them to change, and whether or not yours was the booper moment or whether or not it was COVID, we'll never know. But you've obviously managed to lean in, and people are thinking, well, that's great, but just to remind you, Dave's got 4 kids, all of which are under 10. He runs his own business that's got 18, 19 people in it, and he still manages to find the time and the commitment to pursue some of his marathon ambitions. And I don't want to be a preacher, but a lot of people say I can't, or I can't be bothered, or I haven't got the time. And yet, if you could probably find the time in your diary, if you felt that there was enough purpose or enough inclination to want to change. Dave, looking back on your 2 sort of changes from professional to business, was there lessons? Do you find yourself sort of gone through a first phase and a second phase of life already?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I think you kind of, I suppose you make all your mistakes, or I mean, you make mistakes all your life. But I mean, from being, that first period of your life, you tend to make a lot of mistakes, especially when you're younger, from maybe, I don't know, 15 to mid-20s. And I think you learn from that. I mean, I'd say it took me till my 30s to start kind of looking back and thinking about, why those things happen and stuff. I mean, I don't really have regrets as such. I mean, I tend to think of regrets as being useless, given that, you can't, I don't really believe in it. Learning from mistakes, absolutely. You can't regret it. You've just got to use mistakes as a learning curve. And if you don't make mistakes, you're never going to grow. It's easy to be able to sit there and say, no, I've not made many mistakes and so on, or I regret this, that, and the other. You just got to find a way of moving on and not kind of dwelling on it. I'm not saying make as many mistakes as you can, but by all means, but make sure you learn from them. And I think in that first, let's say, period of your life, I think it naturally tends to make those mistakes, and then look ahead. I mean, I'm more than excited for what lies ahead, and I very much have a different mindset now for a host of reasons.
Okay, and you've come from a very, what I would call, I don't know, male sort of laddish culture, where it's all going in the rugby club, going down the pub, and you talked about going out with the lads. Do you think that environment encourages men to be open and transparent about how they're really feeling inside?
Yeah, more than people might think. I mean, I know there's this perception of, it's not a perception. Men don't really talk openly about stuff. But I think if you've got a decent, circle, social circle, sporting circle, whichever you want to call it. I mean, I know I've got I have had over the years, that circle of friends that I'm more than happy to be open with, and we're open with each other. And it does help, because there's always times where you need that. But yeah, I think it's important that I'm a big believer, like with my children, the eldest 2, I mean, the others are not old enough yet. My eldest 2 play sport, and they've got some great friends. And the main reason that I like them being involved in that is because of that. And, they go onto the field with the friends, they train with the friends, they get to know what teamwork's about, what working hard's about, respect, discipline. And I think it's really important to be involved in those. And yeah, I think probably a male-dominated environment with the sport I've played, but they're good to be around. They're good environments to be around. I do believe that, and it's helped me over the years.
Okay, and what would happen if somebody said to you tomorrow, Dave, you need to stop running, or your knees or your body just says, I'm really sorry, Dave, we can't do this anymore. You cannot run anymore because it's just not possible. What would you then lean into then to try to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I'd have to find something else. I mean, I'll be gutted, but it's one of those things, you know, you can control the controllables. It's like when they close the gyms in lockdown and stuff like that. You just got to find a way. I found myself, you know, doing every variation press up you can think of, and stuff like that, and running and such, which I didn't do before that. I think you've just got to adapt and survive. I think you've got to find a way. I mean, I had, you know, 4 weeks off after the last marathon, and I don't like doing that, but it was a case of, you know, I still need to kind of find a way of burning calories, find a way of keeping active. So I just walked to work, I walked back from work, took opportunities to do things like that. I think there's always something you can do. It's easy. It's the easiest thing in the world to make excuses, and I've done it. I really have. Up with the weight gain and all the rest of it, I made excuse after excuse, and I look back now and think, you know what, it was all nonsense.
Yeah. You've gone really deep on personal growth as well, reading and audibles. What made that happen? And talk about some of your favorites on that point.
I think reading was, I really kind of got a grip of stuff, of like how I go about my daily routine, really. And I think down to the point where, you know, limiting mobile phone use, you know, later at night to get better sleep, so I could perform better the day after and such. And you know, I really dived into all this, as you can tell, and reading was one of the things I could do. I mean, especially through the lockdown and all the rest of it, all the negativity that was around, it was just too much for me, and I just kind of switched off from it. Stopped watching the news and such, because I found it was making me negative. So it was like, right, what else can you do? So I started reading books. I mean, I've always read sports books, but not as much as recently. And then I started reading more like different sports, motivational people, you know, favourites. I mean, I've two standouts, I'd say. Relentless by Tim Grover, and the legacy book about the All Blacks was two standouts. I read David Goggins' book, which is pretty extreme, but then, yeah, those kind of books. I mean, the Relentless and the Legacy one was two standouts, alongside the Winning one from Tim Grover. And I think those are, well, they are about mindset and a real positive mindset. And I think what I did is, the more books I read, I found that I could just relate to it, and it was talking about the journeys people have been on, whether it was training for a marathon or training for an ultra marathon, or I read books about CrossFitters. I read books about all different types of athletes, from sprinters to swimmers, you name it, and everything was pretty much the same. And it was as though there was this theme to everything about these, you know, consistency, fundamentals, basics, getting the things right every day. I listen to the High Performance podcast now, the Jake Humphries ones, and they're the same. And it really is the same message, and it's not rocket science. It's just, you know, getting up, just down to the point of getting up, making the bed, organising yourself for the day, doing what you've got to do, reflecting at the end of the day, and I'm doing stuff that I never kind of thought I'd do a few years ago. You know, end of the day reflections, making notes, reading at the end of the day. Yeah, I think it's
we're cut off the same cloth on this one, Dave. And anybody that's listening to this, I just want you to detect the intention around Dave's thought processes here, and also this real sense of controlling the environment as opposed to the environment controlling him. Dave, I'm going to ask you, when you've done the marathons, have you ever cried? Has it ever hit you to think, all of my training and you crossed the line? Have you had one of those moments where you just sort of just choked up?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, to be honest, when I did, someone told me that when I was training for a fellow called Howard Brooks, who near us, who does marathons, and he was saying the first marathon he did, he was in that position, was choked up. And I remember him saying when he went, I can't remember the mile, but he looked at the board and there was so many miles left, and it just hit him. And I went into the first marathon in York thinking that was going to happen, and it didn't till like after. But then I've done Manchester Marathon since. I've done London, and when I did London, and I did it for charity, and after the event, we went to like an event after, where there was refreshments and stuff, and it really hit me, and that was the moment, and my wife and the kids, I couldn't speak to anyone. I just went and sat in the corner on my own, and I just overcome. Everything just came out, and it was like, you know, all those hours, weeks, months of training, and you know, the mindset and everything, and it's weird, it's nice, but yeah, that it really hit me, and probably a good 10-minute spell, and it's not really like me. It's totally overcome.
Well, I know how that feels, and it's a beautiful moment, but also you go, oh, come on, sort yourself out, mate. Come on.
The corner.
So what's 2023 looking like in terms of, share it now? Come on, not many people listening right now, but you're going to put it out to the world. What does 2023 look like in terms of personal ambition, running, business? What's in store?
Yeah, well, running wise, first of all, I've already booked the Manchester Marathon in April. I've put my name in the hat for London, so if I do get in London, I'll replace Manchester with London. A month after that, I've got the Leeds Marathon, and then I've got York Marathon in October. So that's the marathons anyway. Business wise, we're in the throes of at least 3 bids at the minute for a lot more work and funding and such. So that could see us potentially double our staff. The children and home life, I just want to keep going. I want them to keep growing every day, keep doing the basics, keep you know, keep putting those building blocks together, and keep improving what they do, keep developing the resilience. I think I don't want to say, you know, to the kids to keep getting better at sport, something like that. That's not what the kind of the focus is. It's for them to develop as people first, and then, you know, the athlete second. I believe, you know, that's a big thing. So yeah, I'm very much raring to go, buzzing, whatever term you want to use.
Well, raring to go, buzzing, but again, it's this intentional aspect of planning. You've already booked Manchester, Leeds, and York, and you kind of already set your sail to say this is where I'm going. But you've got points in the sand to say I've got to get to that bit, and that is already starting to fuel your mind to say, well, it's only March and I might get London, and therefore you've got to crack through the winter. But people are going to say, well, yeah, it's easy though. You know, he's been a professional athlete. Then of course he's got that mindset. What would you like to say to those naysayers that are probably sitting there or listening going, it's easy for him because of?
Yeah, it's always easy to say that, isn't it? And I get that a lot, to be fair. It's all right, you can do it. It's easy for you to do it. Don't know, really. Not really thought of it. I mean, I've kind of developed that mindset. I suppose I can't answer it because I've almost hardened myself over the last couple of years to just ignore what people kind of say or think, and I think, you know, happiness is within. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. Happiness comes from within, should I say. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. What I would say to people is, try it out yourself. You don't know how good this can feel. It's not a case of proving points. I think if you lean into this kind of mindset, you realise that, you know, the materialistic things and everything you thought that meant something don't mean anything. And I think we spoke about it a little bit earlier, of how I manage, you know, 4 kids and business and such. If I didn't do the marathons and didn't do the reading and such, I wouldn't manage the other situations half as well. And people think it's the opposite. People think, you know what, you finish work, you've taken the kids to football, you need a rest. No, I don't need a rest, because that's the worst thing that I could do, because I'd be rubbish the day after if I then go and do some form of training, read these inspirational books. It keeps you up there all the time. I think it's the opposite to what people think. It's the opposite to what I used to think. So yeah, I suppose in answer to that, I'd love people to just, you know what, spend a month in my mind, in my routine, and you'll find that you wouldn't be saying that.
Well, it's a sense of curiosity and a sense of what's out there and how can I be different. And I just hold the mirror back up to you on the December day when you said, I've got bad knees and I can't run. was what you told yourself, and yet here you are,
Yeah.
multiple marathons, multiple halves, and going into next year with Manchester, Leeds, York, all probably going to be sub 4 hours. So anybody that sat there saying I can't, Dave also said to himself he can't.
Sub 3.5, that's the aim.
Sub 3.5. Woo!
That's the aim for next year.
That's serious marathon running. Fair play to you. All right. Obviously, you can find Dave with his training business. If you have got somebody involved with construction, this is the kind of guy that can be running your training. He is www.dmr-training.co.uk. Is that right? Okay. Now, just to try to finish off, I'd like to try to think about 3 fundamentals for a really good midlife, because I'm not going to give you your age away, but you're probably in the middle of it, but you've got quite a bit of time to go. So what would you say is going to make you the best midlife husband, business partner, director, marathon runner that you're going to hold yourself accountable to, and that others could learn from?
Yeah, I think the main one is taking ownership. Take ownership of yourself and the environment around you. I think don't keep looking for excuses. Don't look at someone else to kind of dig you out. And I think through the last two-year period, I think that's become even more essential. You could easily look for excuses. Take ownership of yourself, and just realise that the things that you might have kind of thought just came easy or was so accessible can be taken away from you at any point, whether it be a flight abroad for your holidays, or access to a takeaway, access to a pub, everything, access to gyms, everything that was taken away. I think you've got to have, I won't say plan B, but just take ownership. I think the second one, definitely consistency. Those small steps, each and every day, leading to the bigger goals. Nothing happens overnight. And focus on that process and trust the process, actually, and just keep following your own purpose. I think that leads me into the third one. Just be authentic, be you. If you're trying to be something else or someone else, or living someone else's dreams, at some point, you're going to get caught out. You've got to be happy within yourself. I think with that, authenticity is something that I mentioned earlier on, that happiness comes from within. No amount of materialistic things are truly going to make you happy. It's, when the dust settles and it's you and your thoughts, you've got to be happy in that, when no one's looking, or when you've not got something to show off. I think you just got to be authentic at all times, and I don't think you can go far wrong.
That's great lessons of life there, Dave. Taking ownership, consistency. I love that. Nothing happens overnight, which says that it's not immediate. It's not a quick fix. It's just a process. And then really having a little bit of self-love for yourself and for authenticity, and being happy with the person that you're in, and also where you're going. Do you think that you can change the person that you're going to be by looking towards your future to say, maybe I'm not quite happy with Dave in this place, and I think the future Dave could be that person?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can. Yeah, and I think it comes back to that. Probably the 3 points that I've just mentioned, actually. Especially the consistency one. I think you've got to set your goals. I mean, we've just been through mine for next year, and you've got to plan in advance. And as I say, do the little things. You can't leave things to the last minute and then rush it. And I think life passes you by. I mean, I do reflect a lot, and maybe it is an age thing, a midlife. When you get to that age, you reflect more. I'm sure you do. But you look and think, wow, 10 years have gone, 20 years have gone. I spoke today, and I haven't done for a long time, about when I was playing rugby at a professional level and stuff, and that's like 20 odd years ago. It could be as today. It could really be as today. I don't feel any different as a person. But yeah, I think you've got to plan ahead and just be prepared to kind of stick it out for the long term, and just keep, like I say, with that consistency, you're making the right moves. And if you know what, you don't get everything right. If you have a couple of days where you don't get it quite right or whatever, don't be afraid of just carrying on. Don't let it get the best with you and think, you know what, I've had a couple of bad days, whether it be diet, whether it be training, whether it be you know what, you make a couple of bad decisions and you have an argument with someone or whatever, you know, we're all human. I think you just jump back on it as soon as you can, reflect on it, move on, and don't completely kind of let the wheels fall off and beat yourself up about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to appreciate you. And to be fair, I haven't got my planned events in yet for 2023. And one of the things I'm going to do is get my stuff sorted out and put down my markers for next year. I'll keep on looking at this ultra run round Windermere or run round Arran, and I'm thinking, which one am I going to do? But by the end of this week, I'll have nailed in at least one event, a big event for 2023 that's going to compel me.
Let me know. I'm not joining you on the ultra run though, Chris. Not quite yet.
Well, there's no plan at the present. Come on, no, 2024. No. All right, Dave, thank you again for your time. Really insightful feedback. Some really golden moments there of, you know, inner resilience and inner awareness. So thank you very much, Dave Radley, today.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.